All right. So, are you looking to file your Canadian taxes because maybe you're an Amazon seller and you're outside of Canada and you've been collecting these Canadian GST, HST taxes and you're not sure what to do with it and you're on the hook for figuring it out? Well, good news is you're in the right place because we're going to walk you through what I found to be the simple way to file those taxes and actually even save some money in a couple different ways. So definitely, if you're looking to file and save some money, you're in the right place and stick around. So this video, just to make sure you're in the right place, is intended for Amazon sellers who are outside of the US. Now, if you're an Amazon seller who is in Canada, or you're watching this and you're not an Amazon seller and you need to worry about somehow figuring out GST, well, I'm going to make this pretty simple from the standpoint of walking you through the mechanics of how you can do this, and it should work for you even if you're not an Amazon seller. So let's go ahead and get into this. So just to kind of walk through a couple things here real quick. So I do want to give a disclaimer. I am not a tax preparer. So please don't consider any of this to be tax advice. This is meant to be for informational purposes to kind of help point you in the right direction so that if you do what I recommend doing in my next bullet point is consult with an appropriate tax professional. So if you look down below in the description, I've got actually a couple of contacts at tax preparers who specialize in Canadian GST, HST that can help you with this. So don't go making tax decisions based on the fact that some guy on the internet in some YouTube video suggested things a certain way. This is things that I've learned from my own meandering experience is the word I was looking for there, as a person who sells on Amazon, who is US based and files Canadian GST, HST returns. In fact, I've been doing it now for 5 years. So picked up a few things along the way. So again, I hope this is helpful and impactful for you. And again, we'll show you some ways that you can save some money the right way, legally. So we're going to walk through all that. All right, so just as we're starting to kick into this, let me just switch over to something here real quick. All right, so as you are filing your taxes, there's one analogy I like to give is that oftentimes, when people are looking for, let's say, a tax preparer, somebody to help them out, I've had people come to me and they're like all upset because I went to my accountant and they said they couldn't help me out. Well, here's the analogy I like to give with that sometimes. Let's say you go to the eye doctor. So it looks like, this woman here is at the eye doctor. And let's just say she, gets a new prescription for glasses or contacts. Doctor checks out her eyes are healthy. And then she looks at him and says, I have a toothache. Would it make sense if you were at the eye doctor and the eye doctor, after you tell them you had a toothache and they said, well, I don't handle teeth, I handle eyes. Would you say to that person, well, but you're a doctor? That, of course not. You'd go to the dentist. And, if you needed other type of services, you'd go to the appropriate professional for that type of services. Taxes is kind of the same thing. And so just to walk through that here, another analogy I like to give here is that with taxes, it's almost like you have two different buckets of taxes. There's sales tax and income tax. And so sales tax, in this case, the GST, the HST, is going to go to the Canadian government. And that's what we're going to walk through here. And then your income tax, that's what you would take to, let's say, your CPA, whoever's your tax preparer. Far too often folks get hung up because maybe they went to their tax preparer and said, hey, I need help with the Canadian taxes. And the person looks at them like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, of course not. They're, at least here in the United States, people that prepare income taxes specialize in that. It's a lot. It's a lot to figure out. And so they're all about figuring out the income tax part of things because that's their job. That's what they get paid to do. That's what they specialize in. And then there's also people that help with the sales tax part. And so in this case, we're going to be filing the sales tax to the federal government in Canada and walk through all that. Now, if you're watching this and you're an Amazon seller and you're thinking, well, I haven't even gotten started yet. No worries. I have a checklist where I walk you through the hoops that you have to jump through in order to get set up in Canada. It's a great way to grow your business pretty much on autopilot once you're up and running. I'd say pretty much, nothing is fully on autopilot, but considerably less work than running Amazon in the US. And if you already have products that sell on Amazon in the US, chances are your products will sell internationally in places like Canada. So for those of you who are here to learn about the GST HST, let's get into a few things that you're going to need in order GST HST number. If you are not registered, well, maybe you want to go back to my checklist that I just talked about and at least walk you through how you can at least get registered for the GST HST number, because you need that number. And at least in Amazon world, you need that number, which we'll get into here in a moment, in order to be able to collect GST from the customers, which is the expectation of the Canadian government if you have more than 30,000 Canadian dollars in worldwide sales. That's even before you step foot in Canada. So for most people that are Amazon sellers, and when they go into Canada, they're already theoretically required by the government. It's not really theoretically, it's actually kind of in black and white. Then the next thing you're going to need is a net file number. If you don't know your net file number, they usually send it to you every year. I have found, after now doing this for 5 filing years, every year it's been the same number. It's basically like a 4-digit PIN that you need in order to file your taxes. And then you're going to need a tax report. So in Amazon, you have a tax report that has your sales and it has your taxes that you collected. And if you're watching this because you stumbled on the video and you just want to learn what we have to say about the process of filing GST HST, I think you'll find this to be helpful. And then when we talk about, the Amazon reports, you can just go get whatever reports it is that you would use to show your sales and to show your taxes, because we will need that. Then we're going to have some input credits. So we're going to need a few other invoices. Now, if you're an Amazon seller, you probably get an email every month from Amazon saying your Amazon.ca tax invoices are now available. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, somebody is now asking me for taxes. I owe money. I'm just going to ignore it and hope it just goes away. But the good news is it's actually a good thing, because it's money that you've already paid that they're going to let you recoup from the taxes that you owe. And then you want to have, if you've been importing into Canada, any invoices that show what you've paid GST at the border, that's generally speaking also going to be a tax credit. And then you might have some other invoices with some other eligible credits. And again, if you're not sure about what it applies and what doesn't, speak to a tax professional. I mean, you could even call the Canadian Revenue Agency. They're super nice people. So I would suggest, just checking in, with the Canadian Revenue Agency as well is an option in case you have questions. All right. So then next, one thing just to make sure of is if you're an Amazon seller in the Canada portion of Seller Central, you want to make sure that you're registered for the GST HST number and you've put that registration number in there, because if you don't put it in the tax settings, they will not have been collecting on your behalf. So if you are registered and you've not entered it in there, so it looks like you basically have a number that's basically your 9-digit business number followed by RT00001, 3 zeros and a 1. Hope I said that right, but it's definitely 3 zeros and a 1. You want to make sure that's entered in there. Otherwise, they're not going to be collecting from the customer. Then there are some boxes for there's 4 provinces that do not have I should say they are not on the federal GST HST system. So they have their own provincial sales tax, which if you are, having any questions about that, I would definitely speak to a tax preparer, a tax professional on that. In this video, we are focusing solely on the GST HST number. All right. So then when it's time to start, pulling your reports, pulling your data, if you're an Amazon seller, you want to go into Seller Central Reports, Tax Document Library. When you're in Tax Document Library, you want to pull a tax report. So click on the little button there to generate a tax report in Seller Central. Then you just want to update the dates for the date range you're looking for. Generally speaking, for most people, it's probably going to be you're filing for a year at a time. And so whatever the filing frequency, filing period is that you have to file for with the Canadian Revenue Agency, just pull that up. In my case, it's annual filing. So I'm filing here for the previous year. So I put in those dates. I'm going to generate the report. Then it's going to be in progress. And then when it's ready to download, I just click the little download the tax reports. And it's not the prettiest report. And so what you want to do is you want to find your sales and your taxes collected. And then basically it's add up that column. So there's be a column you'll find for the sales and a column you'll find for the taxes. Add those up because you'll need those figures later on. Then what you're going to do is you are going to pull your seller fee invoices. So that's the Amazon.ca tax invoices. So make sure instead of the tax document library tab, you've clicked over to the seller invoices tab. You can do this like pretty much right after you do one, you do the other because you're in the same section of Seller Central. Then pull for each month, because these are monthly reports. So every time you pull a report, it's going to just give you that report, that month's report. And so if you're doing it over the course of a year, you need a year's worth of reports, 12 reports. So basically, there's all these different numbers. It pretty much shows you every time there's been a fulfillment fee. So this is your FBA fees. Essentially, just what it is Amazon has to charge you GST on top of the fulfillment fee. So whatever your FBA fee is, not the commissions, but your fulfillment fee, you don't get back the fees, but you do get back the GST that you paid on top of the fees. So you want to record that number. In fact, what I do is I actually have an assistant go in month by month and give me a spreadsheet after pulling all those reports. So I save all those reports as backup, and then I put for each province, because there's 3 provinces where Amazon has a fulfillment center. And then basically what they do is just put in all the fees, because Amazon is going to charge you a different fee amount, a different GST on top of the fulfillment fees, I should say, based on the fulfillment center where it was shipped out. So if you think about it, the transaction was made in, let's say, Ontario. If let's say somebody in Nova Scotia purchased something and it's being sent from an Ontario fulfillment center, the transaction of me purchasing the fulfillment fee happened in Ontario. So basically, that's where the taxes were calculated. So hopefully that makes sense. And then what will happen is we add up all those. So I want to know the bottom line number, which should be in the bottom right-hand corner, the total I paid. And then I'm going to go through my import invoices. So this is an example here if you have UPS. So with UPS, generally speaking, if you use your own account, which is what I do, or if you have a freight forwarder, they can probably help guide you, but make sure you have, not just in UPS's world, and I believe most of the carriers are similar to this, you'll probably have 2 invoices when you make a shipment into Canada. You'll probably have one that will be a export. So for me, shipping from the US into Canada. So I'm exporting out of the US. So that's my actual freight charges. That's, whether it's parcels or, pallets or whatever the case is, when it's leaving the country. So what I paid to ship it, so that shipment charge is going to be on the export invoice. I want to look here at the import invoice because there's a couple of important things. Now you see here, there's what's called the brokerage GST. Now, if you look 2 lines below that, there's entry prep fees. So that's basically what the folks at UPS are charging me for the customs brokerage. And so because they're paying the government on my behalf, they're charging me a fee, and their fee also has GST associated to it. Then you have the customs GST, which is basically 5%. In most cases, it's going to be about 5% of your declared value. So pretty much whatever you paid for the product, whatever, not what you're selling it for, but what you've paid for the product. So essentially like your landed cost, oversimplifying it here, but your declared value based on essentially your landed cost of the product. So, what you've paid at this point in time. So when you're crossing the border, they just want to collect, their GST for that. Now, you see below there's an amount for duty. Duty doesn't apply here. We're talking about the customs GST. The duties is such a small amount relative to a lot of the other things on the invoice. So we're able to recoup the brokerage GST and the customs GST. So you want to collect all these numbers. Maybe you could also have somebody put it into a spreadsheet for you. Now, one thing just to note is, at least here in the US, I'm looking at an invoice because I, the customer, am paying in US dollars. UPS has conveniently given me my invoices in US dollars. However, I have to report all this in Canadian dollars. So everything we're going to be doing when we're filing is in Canadian dollars. So one little trick is, if you're not sure whether you're supposed to multiply or divide the conversion rate, at least at the time I'm recording this, for the duration of time that I can remember, the Canadian dollar amount has been higher than the US dollar amount. So if you're trying to decide whether the number you're supposed to multiply or divide, depending on which way the ratio is going, if you go from US dollars and you don't get a larger number when you convert the currency, you probably need to do the algebra differently. So in this case, I would be multiplying $230, or excuse me, it wouldn't be $230. It would be my charges that I'm recording. I would multiply them times the 1.2985. That's the conversion rate that I was billed based on. So hopefully that makes sense. Next, what we're going to do is get together any other invoices that you have. If you're not 100% sure if they're eligible expenses, I would definitely talk to somebody who's a tax professional on that. You want to make sure that you're doing everything compliantly. All right, so now it's time to file. So I have a link in the description down below so you can file. So basically on this GST HST net file page, we're going to click the little button that we're ready to file. And then what we're going to do is continue. Basically, this is just a disclaimer, the government saying that they're not responsibility for web security, that there is a little bit of a, even though it's encrypted, that there is some possibility of data issues. Well, that's pretty much going to happen anywhere on the internet. So now we're going to click continue, and then we're going to be on a page. We're going to put in some basic data. Everything you see there with an asterisk has to be filled out. So your business number, the format they put it in is basically your business number is the first 9 digits. And then RT is always going to be in a GST number. So like, it's not even a section that you fill out. It's just RT is there. And then in most cases, for most folks, it's just going to be 0001. You could theoretically say, I want different divisions of my company to have different filing numbers, like 0002, 0003, and so on and so forth. But for most people, you just keep it to 1. So, now, I guess if you had like a parent company that you owned and you had multiple brands underneath that were each their own separate company that had their own separate reports and separate accounts, then maybe you'd want to have the separate 0002, but you have to be registered for that. In most cases, it's just going to end with 3 zeros and a 1. Then we're going to put in that 4-digit access code, that net file number I was talking about before, the one I've had that's 4 digits and it's never changed, even though they send me it in the mail every year, which is very kind of them to remind me. And then I put it in the reporting period. So in this case, it's for 2020. So now what I'm going to do is check off if anything applies here. If you're not sure, maybe you want to talk to a tax professional or the Canadian Revenue Agency. Usually this type of stuff is pretty mechanical as far as, what applies and what doesn't. The government folks should be able to give you a pretty good answer. The one that might apply to some sellers is that I'm filing a nil report. All fields are 0. So what might happen there is, like, let's say you registered in 2020 and your effective date of registration for GST was maybe, let's say October 1st, and you had intended to send stuff in for the fourth quarter, but maybe you got busy and you just didn't get anything in until after January 1st. Well, you didn't, let's just say, because you didn't import anything into the country, you didn't have any sales, there was no activity on GST. So therefore, you still have to file, but you're filing what's called a nil returns. So you're just putting in zeros just to let the government know, hey, I'm acknowledging that I was supposed to file, but I didn't really have any data. So I'm just giving you the zeros. And that's really just if that is the case, of course. Now, if you're collecting and you've had imports, then you want to make sure to follow along with what I have here. And then if any of those other boxes apply, check those off before checking next. And then what we're going to do is put in sales and revenue figures. So whatever your Canadian revenue is in Canadian dollars. So make sure everything we're doing is in Canadian dollars because we're reporting Canadian dollar figures to the Canadian government. So then after the sales, we're going to put in the GST HST number. So put in what we collected. So this is what Amazon collected from customers, and they gave it to us with each of our disbursements. Then we're going to put in our ITCs. That's our input tax credits. So, that was in my case, I was looking at the total of all of my imports, my imports. So my import GST that I paid, as well as my Amazon.ca tax invoices, all that fun stuff I'm putting in there. And then it calculates, thankfully, that number there of basically the difference of what I owe. Now, the nice thing to notice is by being compliant and collecting from customers, and sometimes people think they can just get away with not registering and not collecting. The way it works in Canada, there's really no reason not to, because Amazon's only going to collect that top number, the 5,229 in this case. If we are if we've put in our registration number, so if we register and we put in our registration number with Amazon and we're collecting, then we have something to subtract from. Chances are that $2,168 number, that was going to happen regardless. So because the way it works is I was going to have to, regardless of whether or not I register for GST, I still have to pay at the border. I still have to pay on top of my fulfillment fees. So in a sense, my customers are almost, if you look at it, this is a little bit of a metaphor here, but it's almost like the customers are paying you back for what you've already paid into the system for input tax credits, because you wouldn't be able to get them as input tax credits if you didn't have something to subtract from. So if you're not registered, you can't take them as tax credits. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. So then next, what we want to do is just confirm if there's any other boxes that apply to you for non-resident for non-resident Amazon sellers. Chances are there won't apply. If you're watching this and you're not 100% sure, again, always check with a qualified tax professional, not just what some guy in a YouTube video said. Then what we're going to do is click next. And then when we get to the next, basically, it's just confirming what we've entered there. And then when we're good with that, we're going to scroll down to the bottom of the page, check off two other questions. One about making payment in the next 5 days or when the payment is due. Generally, it's due 3 months after your filing period ended. So if December 31st is the end of the year when you're going to file, it's basically you got to do this by the end of March. And then you're certifying that basically everything is accurate to the best of your knowledge, which you always should be upfront and transparent. Never try to cheat taxes. You do want to make sure that you understand it, but you never want to cheat it. And if you do understand it, like in this case, they have credits that they want you to take. So just make sure that you are doing that, because they're not going to give you the credits unless you attest to them. So then we're going to submit that, and then it gives you the confirmation. Now, what I would make sure to do is if you scroll down below there, there's a place where you can click to save this as a PDF. So that way you've got record of all of this, that you filed it. You want to make sure of that. Now, this is the main step. We still have another step we got to do. And that is, even though we want to hold on to these Canadian dollars that we've earned in Canada, we are going to have to give them to the tax man or woman, because at the end of the day, filing is just the first step. We now have to pay the tax folks at the Canadian Revenue Agency. So, again, stick around because I'm going to show you some ways you can save some money on this as well. So, what you're going to do is, if you're on that same page where we just saved the PDF, there's a link where you can make a payment to the Canadian Revenue Agency where they're going to walk you through it. It's not as user friendly as I think I would like it to be, but who am I to say? But if you start clicking through the pages, and this is a mistake I made, was you look up and you find where you can make credit card payments. Like, oh, okay, I can make a credit card payment. And so, one of the ones that you could use is Plastique. And Plastique is not inexpensive. Great reputable company. Nothing wrong with the folks at Plastique. But let me just walk you through a couple different scenarios here. So if you're using that, just to give the example here of if you were using this service to pay the tax bill we just walked through just a moment ago, they would charge a fee of $107.13. That is Canadian dollars. But that's not really all that you're paying. That's what they're charging you. But there's other things that you're going to be paying that you might not realize, and they add up very quickly. So what I'd like to do is just give a quick little rundown of how currency conversions work. So you might have seen a chart like this where it might say like $1 is 1.33 Canadian dollars. It's actually more favorable than that if you're bringing Canadian dollars, into the US, but let's just go with this for now. This is pretty much we're on average over the last 5 years. It's been around this, so it's relatively stable, but it's a little bit more favorable actually, which is a good thing. But anyway, I digress. So if you look here in the disclaimer underneath the conversion rate, you will see it says all figures are live mid-market rates. Well, what does that mean? Mid-market means it is what banks charge each other for converting currency. So if you're a bank, a financial institution, and you're working with another financial institution and you're moving money, you're going to pay the mid-market rate, what that is. Now, if you're watching this, I'm going to assume you're not a financial institution, and that you are needing to convert the currency. Now, what ends up happening is you will always pay to convert currency. And it's pretty much without fail in most services, not the mid-market rate and not itemized. So you might end up paying about 1 or 2%, but it's not that you're being charged a line item where it says like, okay, here's what you're going to get, here's what we're going to charge you. Usually these are just an erosion, I guess would be the word I'm looking for, of what you're expecting. So for example, let's just say the currency conversion is 2%. So if hypothetically speaking, using this example we have right in front of us, where let's say you had 1,331 Canadian dollars that you're bringing into the US, and you're thinking, oh, based on this conversion rate, I should be getting 1,000 US dollars. Well, if the conversion fee is 2%, they would just show you a conversion rate, which would make it so that you're not getting $1,000, you're getting $980. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, let's just walk through the logistics of that. So let's say you have funds in Canadian dollars because you're making sales in Canada. So if you're an Amazon seller, they're going to disperse the funds to, let's say, Bank of America or whoever your bank is. And your bank, if it's not in Canada, can't accept Canadian dollars. It has to be in the local currency. So if you're British and you have a British bank, they want pounds. If you're in the US, they want US dollars. So it's going to be converted, and you're going to lose about 1 to 2% ish in that ballpark. And then they're going to convert that to US dollars. And so now you're going to have US dollars in your bank account. Now, if Amazon could do this for you, so if you just put in your US checking account, they just submit the funds. So if at 5 o'clock on every other Saturday is when you get your disbursement, when they make the disbursement, whatever the conversion rate, mid-market rate is at the time, you're going to lose whatever they're going to convert it, and you're going to be basically charged whatever that amount is for the whole disbursement. Now, then what's going to happen is it's going to be time later on to pay your taxes. Well, you've got all your money now in US dollars, but you're going to pay a foreign government who wants it in their currency. So now it's going to be converted back to Canadian dollars. So let's give an example of what that looks like. So using our example before, like Plastique, they charge 107.13 in Canadian dollars. So let's just say we moved funds from Canadian dollars to US dollars. So the funds, the 3,000-ish dollars that we just used in our example, that let's say we convert that, our conversion fee might be somewhere like 61.22, but it's not outlined anywhere. It's just 61.22 less for that 3,000-ish that at the course of time was brought over. It's not going to be in one disbursement, but over time, we'd lost about 61.22 to bring it back. Then, in order to be able to send it back from USD, from US dollars to Canadian dollars, we're going to lose that again, because now the currency is erosion. So we need to send more of our US dollars than what the mid-market rate will be at the time in order to make up for, to be able to send the exact amount we need to send. Now, this assumes a conversion rate of 2%. It may not necessarily be 2%, but hopefully, this helps with the illustration. Now, that might not be it. This is, you might be thinking, well, this is all starting to add up real quick. Well, let me show you. So here's a screenshot from American Express's Help Center. So if you have a small business card, they're charging you 2.7% international transaction fee. So you might be charged, because you're not a financial institution, you might be charged a conversion as well as a foreign transaction fee. And that's not uncommon with credit cards. So to use this example, since they laid it out at 2.7%, let's just say your credit card company is charging you 2.7%, assuming that, credit cards charge relatively similar foreign transaction fees, which is separate than any conversion. I don't even want to use the word fees. It's just less favorable mid-market rates. So you kind of lost in this cost, because, there's always a cost to everything. So your total for that is $312.21. So it's like almost like 10% of what we owed the government. An additional, it's actually more than 10%, actually, now that I think about it, because it was just a hair over, it was like $3,060 or whatever it was. But you can imagine I'm now paying an extra 10% than I should be paying over the course of time. And Plastique, at least to their credit, was transparent about what the fee was beforehand. If you're using a credit card, your credit card issuer, it'll be in the terms and conditions. And you probably won't even know about it until you get the statement, and then it says like, oh, here's the foreign transaction fee we charged you. And then I've mistakenly paid too much in foreign transaction fees over the years. And then, when you were converting from Canadian dollars into US dollars, or whatever your local currency is, and then back to Canadian dollars, and that, we just lost twice there. So that adds up quick. And if you're wondering what that is in US dollars, this is, let's say about $240, $250 ish. I'm kind of using back of the envelope math in my head. So it may not be exact, but it's in that ballpark. It's still pretty high when you think about that. Now, what if I was to say to you, there's a way we can save on a lot of that? So let's walk through that here. So, this is what I actually paid to send the money to the government. You always got to pay a little something, especially when you're not in the country. But I have saved 80% on those Canadian dollars. Or sorry, those fees that I was going to be paying over time for conversions, for, potentially foreign transaction fees on a credit card, and the plastique fee. But what I ended up paying was about 80% less than that. So let's just walk through logistics of how that works. So, when you get your disbursements, so every 2 weeks or whenever the time period is that you're getting paid from, let's just say Amazon, and they got your Canadian dollars, well, put it into a local account. And you may be saying, how do I do that? Which we'll walk through in just a moment. And in this way, if it's Canadian dollars going to a Canadian dollar account, you didn't lose anything because it's all in the local currency. So it just stays there. Now, let's just say I want to take a portion of that and convert it to US dollars to put into my local, let's say, Bank of America account. There, I will lose a little bit in the conversion, but I don't have to send all of it. Now, if I have Amazon putting all of my money into my US bank account, they're going to convert all of it. But if I have them put it into a local account, I'm in control. And I like having control. I'm sure if you're a business owner, you like the idea of having a little bit more control, especially of your money. And that's what these local accounts let you do. And so when it's time to pay the taxes, you're not paying conversion fees. You might have to still pay, like in this example, I paid a wire transaction fee, but I wasn't paying conversion fee. So I saved a lot of money, no foreign transaction fees. So that kind of thing. So that's how I ended up saving so much. Now you might be saying, how do I do that? So Amazon, if you don't have Amazon putting money into your local account, they're putting into your account, I should say, but they're putting it into local relative to the marketplace. That's what they call a payment service provider. And they've gotten real strict lately on payment service providers. In fact, if you're a U.S. resident, there's only 2 companies at the time I record this that Amazon allows to be connected, or, at the time this comes out, they're phasing all the others out. So only 2, which would be Ping Pong Payments and Payoneer. Both are reputable companies. That's why Amazon allowed them to be payment service providers. I personally use Payoneer. That's who I've been using for the last couple of years. I've had a good experience with them. In full disclosure, I am an affiliate, but if you are interested, down below, you can get a free account. In fact, at the time I'm recording this, and who knows, maybe they'll have this going for a while in the future, but they do have a sign-up bonus. There are some requirements that you might have to meet, but you could get $100 sign-up bonus. I want to say transfer like $1,000 or something like that. But basically all I did was, within my Payoneer account, just go to make the payments, and then enter in the banking information for the Canadian Revenue Agency. And you may be saying, well, how do I do that? Well, it's all actually online. There's the pay without a Canadian bank account, which you could do. Now, you could theoretically do this with your own bank, but they're going to probably charge you a conversion fee. And again, it's not just the conversion fee when you're sending it there, it's also the conversion fee. That's kind of this hidden charge that people don't really talk about of when you received the money. So you're paying it twice. So going back to my example before, if we can put it into a local account and hold some of that and not convert all of it back to US dollars, then I can pay that. And also I can pay other vendors. So if I have like a prep center or somebody else that I'm paying, or, maybe for whatever reason, it's more favorable to, move Canadian dollars to euros or something, I can do that at that time too. So I have a lot more flexibility to play around with my money. Or if I think, oh, you know what, maybe there's an inflationary environment in one country or the other, so I want to have more control of the when it happens, you can kind of play that game. Now that can be a little dangerous. I'm not recommending that. You play the currency conversion game, but some people get into that. But either way, it's always good, in my opinion, to have more control of the when and the how much, and that's what allows you to do. And then when you're ready to pay your taxes, you could do that. So um, if that sounds great, there is a link in the description for Payoneer. So I hope this video has been immensely helpful to you. It's been a journey for me in my international selling career, and I've picked up a few things along the way. Again, this was not intended to be tax advice, purely informational to help you. And I definitely recommend you do your own research, and there's links below to help you get started with that. If you found this video to be helpful, please consider giving a thumbs up. If you're a Amazon seller or e-commerce seller and you are not subscribed to this channel, please consider subscribing. And I would love to, again, to know your thoughts in the comments below. Click that little thumbs up icon. And if you made it all the way through this video and you're not selling on Amazon in Canada, consider going to canadachecklist.com, where you can download a free checklist that will walk you through some of the steps. And hopefully I made it here so that it does not seem as bad, to use my doctor analogy before, like you're going to the dentist and getting a root canal, which is oftentimes what people associate taxes with, that you realize it is not that difficult. And if you have the right information, you can save yourself a lot of money too. So thank you so much. And I wish you the best in your e-commerce journey. Take care.